Today's webinar is on the topic Bridging the Gap, Integrating Built Assets with BIM for Smarter Operations. So, myself, I'm Manoj Victor. I have 10 plus years of experience in construction and I have a master's in construction technology and management. So, this webinar will be covering on these broader topics. I think we'll be covering on what asset digital twin workflow is, and we'll get into how we navigate into BIM spaces during operations, and how do we configure assets so that we bring the real-time built assets into a digital twin platform like Crayon 60, and we'll show you how BIM and IoT can be integrated so that we have all the real-time data of assets, their operational values and parameters being captured on a BIM model. And we'll also look into connecting it to external databases, and we'll touch upon 4D digital twin, which majorly helps us across the construction life cycle of things. And finally, how all this can be, exported and visualized as analytical data for decision making. What is a digital twin, right? So this is a buzzword that we often hear across platforms, across social media platforms, right? So what is a digital twin? So a digital twin is a virtual representation of a physical object or a process or a system, so that helps us to monitor, analyze and optimize the real world counterpart. So this can either be a building, it can be a car, it can be a motorcycle, it can be as simple as a pencil. So any physical object that has a virtual representation is a digital twin. And these are different terminologies, that surround or that is linked with digital twins. It is linked with the physical asset, it has a digital model, and it helps us with the entire life cycle management of a particular asset, and it facilitates BIM integrations, and it helps us with connecting data from multiple sources, multiple sensors, IoTs, etc. And finally, what does it help us with? It helps us with the monitoring of performance of the assets. So, in today's webinar, we'll be looking at the asset digital twin, right? And we also have asset management server, which helps with the entire part of your maintenance, which comprises of preventive and corrective maintenance. But for this webinar, we'll be sticking much or stick to the asset digital twin, which is ADT that we refer to. So this will look at how IoT sensors are integrated with BIM, and how this integrated information is helpful to manage our assets, and how heat maps, real-time data from the assets are captured on a BIM model, and data connections. So data connections is again, how our data with respect to BIM and assets can be extended to other databases or a simple Excel spreadsheet. So to give a holistic view of the workflow that asset digital twin operates with, we have the IoT sensors placed on different assets, the real-time built assets. So we have the IoT sensors, which those are capturing data on a real-time basis. Then this data is being pushed to a server or a database where all the values are stored against time. So that we refer to time series databases. So we have all the data from the asset pushed onto a database where it is getting stored. And if you see on the right hand side, I have the BIM data. So this BIM data can come from Revit, IFCs, NWDs, or any other file formats. We support more than 25, 30 plus file formats. And this data from the BIM also has asset information in them, what we call as asset information model. So this asset model element that we gathered from BIM is imported into Crayon 60 platform, and the data that is being stored from the IoT sensors onto the database is also fetched into Crayon 60 using API calls. And this information coming from BIM and IoT is integrated as a sensor placement on each assets. So this is what the entire workflow of the ADT is. So we have the IoT at one end, we have the BIM model at one end. How these two informations are collated and they are managed efficiently within a platform like Crayon 60. Right? So the first thing that we'll be looking at is how do we navigate BIM space. So uh, there is an overwhelming, uh, I would say, there is always from the operation side when they look at the BIM models, they are actually overwhelmed by the details and they are overwhelmed by the spaces that they have to navigate into. So, how do we create a BIM model that is useful for a person who hasn't looked at the BIM model during the project phase and he's just looking into the BIM models during the operation phase? So, we'll see how Crayon 60 is helping us to navigate inside the viewer for better understanding of different assets and components inside the BIM model. Then, how do we use the model tree to on off different elements, different categories of BIM model elements, and finally creating view states. So as an operational manager, if I am in charge of the first floor, I would want to see the data which is very specific to my first floor. I don't want to see so much of data that I get lost, navigating from different floors to different floors or different buildings to different buildings. So this is a how we kind of create view states. So you could see here that we have the sectioning tool with which we have the sectioning capabilities for X, Y, Z axes, and also we also give the feasibility of creating box sections. So this is an example where we are creating a box section for a second floor element. So I'm just trying to get you through the concept of how we create a box section covering only the second floor components. So I have a section that has been created and I have all the model elements pertaining to this second floor. And I can have this saved as a view state so that whenever I get into this model, I have already the second floor data stored. So I may not have to do this sectioning again and again. So this is always stored as a view state inside your model. So now having the view state stored, I'd be interested to on off different components. So I'm just turning off my floors and ceilings so that I could look into the interior of my particular floor. So I can just navigate into my floor using this navigation first person view, where I can just go to different components and just check for their parameters, right? So this is a way in which we will be able to navigate efficiently within the BIM environment. So now moving on to the most important part, how do we capture assets? So I have a BIM model that is handed over to my uh, to operations through a common data environment. So now I have to bring in my assets. So how do I bring in my assets? So bringing in assets has two major components. One, I would have to configure my APIs for bringing in my assets. So in a real-time project, you'll have sensors or you'll have assets from different OEMs. So how do I bring assets from different OEMs? So I have different sensors available from different OEMs. How do I bring it? How do I group them as based on different entities like rooms or levels or buildings, etc. So I can actually configure my API calls. So Crayon 60 has open APIs, and I can bring in this particular data of my assets using my API call. So in this particular example, I have brought in all my components of my asset pertaining to the second floor. So I have all the different types of assets available, and I can group them based on my room data, location data. So I have already, you could see over here that I'm able to see my conference room assets. I'm able to see my office room assets, office room 2 assets, etc. So this way, I'll be bringing in my assets using my APIs, because Crayon 60 has an open API, and most of the OEM providers also give access to the open APIs. So we fetch in data from the databases where this OEM real-time data is getting stored. So now we have the sensor information available, and we have the BIM data available. So how do we integrate these two? So how do we integrate BIM information with that of the IoT information? So there are two ways of doing it. One being a manual placement of IoT onto the BIM model components. The second one would eventually translate to placing the BIM elements, or placing the IoT sensors onto the BIM elements through a automated way, which can be based on model parameters, or which can be based on Excel sheets, etc. So we'll see all these three combinations. So one being manual placements, which doesn't have any models shared parameters or external Excel sheets. The second would be how do we place our IoT sensors onto the model elements using the shared parameters or the asset information that is available inside our BIM model. The third one would be to integrate it using a external spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, which has the model information as well as the asset information populated manually on an Excel sheet. How do we use that to integrate the BIM and IoT assets, right? So the first example, we'll see how we are doing it manually. So I'm just getting into a model. So this is a viewer that we have inside Crayon 60. So I can click on the manual placement. I can give a connection here. Okay. So I'm giving a connection called manual placement, and I can save this and continue. So yeah. So now I would see the entire list of assets available on my assets database. So now I also see the view state that is available that we had created as the first step. So now I can again go and off my components which restrict my view. So now I have an entire top view of my second floor elements, and I can select a particular asset. I can just click on it. I can click on the model element, and I can upload this. So once this is done, this asset is getting linked with that of the BIM element. So I will just do it again for another element so that we get an idea of how we do. So I'm just placing it onto this light. So now I have two assets, one AC and one light being positioned manually. Now, since this is done in the documents module, I have a ADT view that is created. So you could see a manual placement view that had been created here. And here I'll be able to see the two assets that I have positioned, right? And I'll be able to see them on the model as well. So again, I go back to the view state. I can switch off my. So even this view states can be created with a switched off floors and ceilings, so that you need not have to even switch off the ceilings and floors on and off again, right? So I could click on this particular sensor element. I'll be able to see the real-time information of this particular AC. So this is an AC. So I could see that this AC is on. And in the further course of the webinar, we'll be able to see how we can even control the ACs within this platforms, right? So now we have seen how we are placing an asset onto a BIM element manually. So we have placed two assets onto a BIM model element. Now we'll see how this can be automated with the features available in Crayon 60, right? So now I have this Excel placements. So no, I don't have my Excel available with me. So I'm just trying to import my Excel. So I have the asset master that is available, and I've imported it. So I'll assign a workflow. If this asset master has to be approved, I can also have this router through an approval workflow within Crayon 60. And now I would do this automated placement. So I'll select the Excel placement as a connection name, and I'll select the Excel that I've loaded, which is the asset master. Now I'll pick in the parameters. So my entity ID has the asset ID in them, and my IFC GUID has the model's unique parameter. So Now, the entity ID and the asset ID, sorry, the entity ID and the model's IFCG ID are mapped, with which we'll be creating a new ADT view. So this has been created from an Excel sheet where we had the IFCG ID from the model and we had the asset ID from the asset information, right, which came from the sensors. So I also have different level filters available. If the modeling had been done perfectly, I'll be able to use the level filter panel available. But since they have different components available here and there, so we have created a view state. So now I could see a delete option. In case if I position some asset wrongly, I can come in and delete it here, and I can modify it again in my document view. And I have a chat option available, so in case if I have to give a notification to some of my colleague who has to switch off the lights and ACs, they can just drop a message so that they can come in into the platform and they can just switch off the ACs from within the Crayon 60 environment without the need for the person to go down to the specific room to turn off the ACs, lights and fans. So the third option is a more automated way, I would say, just using the asset information that is available inside the BIM model. So I'm using the model parameter based. So now within my model parameters, I'm just choosing my asset ID, which is the entity ID, and I'm just trying to populate the sensor. So what this does is it takes the asset ID from my asset database and it maps it with the BIM model element whose entity ID matches with that of the asset ID. So once that is done, I'll be able to see a automated model placement, right? And I'll be able to switch on my IoT sprites. Same. So now what I can do more is, I can go in, I can pick up a specific element using my sensor information. It zooms into the specific asset. And here I'll be able to turn it off. I'll be able to decrease the temperature of the ACs within the Crayon 60 interface, right? So this is again doable within the interface, within you sitting in front of a system rather than going to the exact physical location. So we also see the smart meter data that is available. I can also switch off my lights, fans from here. And I also have the feasibility of creating heat maps wherein you could see different heat maps are created based on different parameters. So this is a temperature related heat map wherein I see the temperature details, and I can also create it based on humidity or lux values, or again I can also do it using CO2 levels. So these are some of the capabilities where you can overall view of how your rooms are performing, or what is the real-time condition within each of the rooms. Let it be lux levels, let it be CO2, or let it be temperatures. If you have to manage your temperatures within the room, you can adjust your ACs, within the interface of Crayon 60 itself. So now, how do we connect the asset master? So we have seen that we have brought in the Excel sheet which had the entire list of assets, and I would like to add over here that we have the method of creating Excel or CSV files, and we also have the feasibility of attaching it to different databases in case we have a MS Access or a SQL database that we have to connect to. We would be able to connect it with the external databases as well. It can also be as simple as an Microsoft Access to as complicated as a ERP system, right? And it can also be connected with schedule. So this schedule can come from an XML file, or it can come from your MSP, or it can again be a simple Excel that you want to handle it, linking it with our BIM model elements, right? So in this example, I would like to showcase, this is a list of assets, and we had the room information and different building information. What is the warranty, start date, end date, and installed and commission date. So this particular asset master, I'm just bringing it into Crayon 60, right? I'm just again bringing it into Crayon 60. And again, as I told you, I can route it through a workflow so that this is approved by certain stakeholders. And now I can go into my model and yeah, so we have an external data connection. So I'm just creating it as an Excel. So you saw DBs as well. So this can also be connected to different databases if we have access to. And now I'm trying to link my identity column which comes from my Excel, and this is the model mapping which is available as the parameter inside my BIM model elements, right? So I can have status columns, or I can have progress columns on whether it has been installed or commissioned, etc. And I can bring in different model parameters. So I can bring in something like a type name, I can bring in something like area, volume. All this can be brought in as a model parameter. And I can also select fields from my Excel. What I could see here is my field selection. So I can also select all my fields that is of interest to me. So I'm selecting almost all the fields from my Excel. Right. Okay. So now I'm loading it. So once I load it, I can save this as a connection first, so that next time I get into this platform, I already have this connection available, and I could see a analytical chart. So I can see what are the different assets that is available within a particular room. So I can filter it this way, that what are the different assets into my different rooms. So within conference, I have a ceiling fan, I have a split AC, I have a cassette AC. So these are different ways of doing analytics with your data. I can also filter it based on OEMs. What are the different OEMs based on which my assets are ranked? And I can also do it based on the month in which they have been commissioned, or warranty in which month they have been uh, they are going to get over. So these are some of the different analytical capabilities that can be achieved by extending the Crayon environment with any other database that is of interest to you. So these are different ways of creating. So if we have multiple buildings, I'll be able to see them across the buildings as well. Right? This analytics and this connection to an external database, just like as simple as an Excel to as complicated as a ERP, is all possible with the connection settings that we have it, right? So this is majorly coming into the 4D part of things, right? So what we have seen so far is how we were able to connect our assets to the BIM model element after construction, which is post construction and during operations. But how does a digital twin come into picture, or how does a building digital twin come into a picture when it comes into construction life cycle? So if you have a construction life cycle, how a digital twin representation of my ongoing progress can help me to arrive at data driven decisions, or arrive at a more logical decision on how to crash your schedule or how to fast track your schedule, etc. So we'll again get into a workflow where we are going to assign the task start date and end date to that of our model elements, and how we are using this to extend analyzing our projects plan and actual progress of the project, right? So I'm just opening up a model, right? So I have a structural model that has been opened, and I can use the data connection that we have seen a little earlier, right? So I can go and get the data connection on, and I could see, I have the plan dates mapped from my schedule to here. So again, I have different ways of looking at my model elements. I can filter it based on different categories or different family, etc. And I can run a timeline simulation of my planned progress. So this shows us the planned progress of how the project is going to come up with respect to time. And now once the actual dates are getting plugged in, so I have a actual dates plugged in, I have a baseline dates. So I can also do a comparison between my planned versus actual. So this is a scenario where I can look into what was planned and what is actually being achieved. So at any point in time, I can just pass my simulation and check what has been completed and how the actual progress is with respect to the plan. So we have all this data within the platform. So next we'll just see how these data can be exported, and this data can be brought in into a BI tool. So I have the entire data available with me from the operations here, right? And now I can bring it into a Power BI. So I can just import it as an Excel. I have it inside my Power BI. And once I have it, I'll be able to develop different charts. I'll be able to transform certain data to add additional measures or columns inside Power BI. So once that is done, I could create different visualization charts. So this is an example of tracking what is the different components with respect to the construction. So I have my cost information, which was available on my Excel sheet, and I had the model data that is coming up from my model elements. So now I have an integrated analytics that can be performed based on my BIM data as well as my external data, right? So I could also do a earned value analysis of how my project is progressing with respect to my planned dates, right? So these are some of the extended capabilities of what we can do with respect to the data that we are able to gather, right? So now we were able to showcase you that the digital twin can be applied. So there are different ways of looking at digital twin. So it can be a very simple descriptive twin where you just have a virtual replica of the real-time object, which can be your building. So having a 3D model of your building can also be termed as a digital twin. But what we are doing here is, we are extending the capabilities of digital twin with respect to the construction operations. How do we do our plan and actual monitoring, and also post construction when we are going into the operations phase. We have seen how your real-time IoT sensors or real-time asset values can be mapped to that of more BIM elements, how that can help us to gather real-time data, which can be a parameter based value, which we saw in terms of a smart meter, where it showed you across what is the average power consumption, what is the power factor, etc. Or it can also show you something like a on off state of a particular asset. When it comes to lights, fans, I'll be more interested to know whether they've been switched on off, or whether a room has been occupied, not occupied. So these kind of informations, when it is available through a BMS, when it is available through a OEM or a sensor provider, these can be fetched into Crayon 60. I can just represent it or integrate it with my BIM component and show it on a more interactive BIM models, right? So okay, so I think with that, we are coming to the end of this webinar. I hope this gave you some insights about what Crayon 60 as a platform is, and how the Asset Digital Twin platform can help you with BIM IoT integrations, how it can help you to fetch real-time data from different IoT sensors installed at the real-time built assets. So I hope this webinar was informative, and this webinar was of use to you. Hoping to see you on a different topic, on a different webinar. And please post your queries, questions to our team. We'll be happy to answer them back. And thank you one and all for joining.